There's been an interesting journey through learning how to develop for mobile, not just in training, but how to position content onto mobile devices in other areas of the business. And one of the pitfalls that we've seen some of our clients fall down is throwing everything at mobile. And we've learned that it isn't right for everything, particularly the smartphone, the small handset, is not a great device for taking long training courses on. And we did see a few examples in the early days where organizations would attempt to transfer a 60-minute or a 90-minute e-learning course onto a mobile phone, and that experience is often very unpleasant. So we've learned it's not right for everything. We've learned that there is still a considerable nervousness in the market around which standard and which technology and which instructional design strategy to follow. Nobody wants to equip their entire workforce with the Betamax of mobile learning. People are very nervous to back the wrong horse. Increasingly, we see iPad uptake is increasing, but will the iPad still be the device of choice in 2 years' time? I don't think anyone can answer that. If they can, I think there's some money to be made there for them. So there's still a nervousness in the marketplace. And we've also learned, and many organizations have learned, that you have to use your mobile content in a very tactical way. You can't pack everything into the mobile device. People will engage with it for short periods of time. They'll engage with it at specific moments, just in time and just in place. And really, you need to be thinking about those moments, those very small moments for mobile. If you pack everything into it, it becomes unusable. It becomes like the suitcase that won't shut. So our journey through mobile, I would imagine, reflects some of yours. We were a Flash development house purely and simply 3 or 4 years ago. We did some work in Lectora and HTML because some of our clients like to work in HTML and be able to update themselves. But our best work was always done in Flash, we felt. With the iPad and Apple products in general, well, of course, they don't play Flash. So when mobile came along, we started looking at different ways to deliver this content. And of course, all the tablets have different screen sizes. We built some HTML5 templates. They're fantastic, but of course, HTML5 won't work very well in IE9 or below. So most organizations we work with, their IT infrastructure is IE9 or below. So the wonderful HTML5 templates that we've built to work on the iPad don't work very well on the desktop. We've built some content as apps, but as anyone who's built or tried to deliver content as apps knows, it can be an expensive business, but it can also be a very tricky business to actually get the content onto the device. And the big issue is this one in the top here. You often end up with 2 builds, one for your desktop, one for your mobile device. And 2 builds, high cost, high risk, it just doesn't fly. So where did we end up? Well, we ended up dipping our toe in the water with various clients in many different ways, and that's what we're going to share today. But I think before we do, it's worth reminding ourselves quite how important this is right now. Some of the statistics we'll see here, they just illustrate the fact that mobile is here whether we like it or not. It's pervasive, and increasingly people expect to be able to bring their own device into work and have it supported by the IT infrastructure, and also be able to access content and training on it. So we know that we have this always-on culture. What does that mean? Well, it means it's happening. We can join them. We can't beat them. It's over. We see some statistics here around mobile phone ownership, and I think smartphone ownership is the important one here. More than 1/3 of US adults own smartphones. That number is going to increase. It's increasingly the tool of choice to access the internet and to access content, so we need to be abreast of that. Mobile is becoming the tool of choice for information search. So we can either package our content for mobile, in which case it will be searched, or we can lag behind and become the second choice. We know that people use mobile devices differently in the home and in the workplace, but actually if we look at this split between enterprise and personal, we see that roughly 75 to 80% is web browsing, 60 to 75 is email, and then the real split is the working remotely for enterprise and then the gaming for the personal use. And what can we learn from this? Well, we learn that the tablet connects the home and the workplace. I don't know about you, I have a laptop for work. I rarely turn it on in the evenings unless I plan to do some work. But my iPad, which I also carry around at work, is the tool I use in the evening. It's what I use during the day to access email. It's what I use in the evening to pull up a recipe or to make contact with somebody. So tablets particularly, but also other mobile devices do connect the home and the workplace. We see that mobile learning is increasing. mobile learning for enterprise, but in many cases, businesses are not optimized for mobile phones and for support. We do think businesses are preparing for mobile, perhaps not fast enough, and if the business is taking its time to prepare, then the learning function is going to struggle to get ahead. Now, it's interesting if we look at the market share for the operating systems. We hear so much about mobile being the new exciting thing, the hot topic. I said it myself just earlier. But interestingly, 35% of us still use Windows 7, 42% of us still use Windows XP. We're talking about desktops and laptops here. So the world isn't quite ready to switch to mobile. We are still in a position where if we want to deliver content to mobile, we still have to think about how we deliver that content to the desktop and the laptop. We're not ready to switch over entirely into a mobile delivery. Another interesting fact, if we look at the mobile and tablet operating system market share, there are so many operating systems out there, but in my opinion, we really don't have to plan and develop training for all of them. If you hit the big three, Android, iOS, and Symbian, you're going to reach 70% of users. So I don't think we're quite at the stage yet where we have to be creating content that will run across all platforms. Where does that leave us? I think it leaves us at this point here, the jackpot, what we're aiming for. It's the ability to develop content once and have it run on as many platforms as we need it to run on. We don't want two builds. We don't want two different technologies. We don't want to have to update two pieces of content every time there's a change. And we don't want the cost or the development effort that's associated with those things. We want to develop once and run it on a PC, on a laptop, on an iPad, on a Samsung Galaxy Tab, an iPhone, an Android phone, and have the same quality experience with each. So now might be a good time to take a look at what we consider to be the main players in the mobile space from the technology perspective. And I think there's a whole instructional design piece around how you use mobile, but the technology piece is what's keeping people up at night at the moment more than anything. So it's worth settling on this for a few minutes. This is a crude representation, to be fair, but I think all of these languages and development tools that we have down the left, they have a good side, they have a bad side, and they have an ugly side, and Flash is up there at the top. It's still probably the most powerful tool out there for developing media-rich, flowing, beautiful animated content. But it's expensive to develop in, it's very processor-heavy, which is why Apple won't support it, and it doesn't work on the majority of mobile devices that people have. We know that we can do a lot with basic HTML. It will run across all platforms, but the interactivity can be limited in terms of what you can develop for mobile content. And it's hard to control. It's hard to test on different platforms. We found this ourselves. With Flash, we had a framework, and you can work in one screen in a piece of content and be fairly sure that the rest of the framework and the other screens won't be affected. If you're working in basic HTML, if you make a change, really you need to test the whole thing again. So testing and development becomes a more tricky subject. We all know about apps. We all use apps on our mobile devices. Apps are great. They sit on the device. They're fast. They're responsive. But they're hard to roll out. They're hard to get onto people's devices. The security issues around them are tricky for many organizations. And you need a different version for each platform. The Apple app won't work on the Android phone. HTML5 could be the language of the future. It can rival Flash for the rich output. But supported features vary on the different browsers, and it won't work on the older browsers. And Articulate Storyline, great way to publish desktop and iPad content, but again, fairly limited interactivity and very set screen sizes. This is why we probably think that the bottom one here, the responsive HTML, is the way forward in the short term. If you haven't come across responsive HTML, you develop once, and you can deploy across multiple platforms. I won't say it can't, but it's very difficult to rival Flash for the rich output, and there is a large testing overhead, but it's still a very powerful tool.